Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 149 of the Citrix session. I'm your host today, Andy Whiteside. Bill Sutton, Geremy Meyers with me. Bill, how's it going?
Going well. 149. Wow.
And today is November 11th, 2023, to give you kind of a reference on time.
It's the 20th, Andy. It's the 20th.
November 20th, something like that.
That's right.
Something like that.
Thanksgiving week. Yeah.
Thanksgiving week of 2023. Geremy, how's it going?
It's going excellent. So this is 149, right? When you do your 100th Peloton ride, they send you a shirt. I feel like we need to do something special for like the 150. That would be fun.
I could send you a shirt. I got a whole closet full of shirts. I mean, like a closet the size of this room full of shirts.
You know, I do have quite a few XenTegra shirts, in fact. So I by the way, one of my favorite ones is the XenTegra NetScaler t-shirt. I've got a few of them that say Citrix. I might even have one that says Podio. That goes back a ways, though.
Yeah.
Do you have a Citrix hoodie?
Oh, I do not. And I love hoodies. I could get on that bandwagon. Yeah. Hey, listen, if Bill was, a mere 7 minutes from me, we could all do the next one from the office. That'd be a good 150-er.
Bill, what was I saying to the leadership group in our meeting this morning about hoodies?
You want to give them away?
Everybody loves hoodies.
Yeah.
We love them. And this is hoodie weather. This is like, it's warm enough to where you could wear shorts, which I have on right now, but it's chilly enough to where you wear a hoodie. It's hoodie and shorts weather. That's what it is.
Guys, so let me do the XenTegra commercial. Sometimes I forget, sometimes I don't. If you're working with Citrix and other EUC technologies, but specifically Citrix, and you're not taking full advantage of the product, which you're not, I guarantee you're not. I was with customers last week in Toronto. They're using the bare basics of Citrix. They're complaining that it's too expensive. It's like, guys, because you're not using it for what it could do. If you use it for what you could do with it, you could get a lot more value out of it. And the money it's costing would seem like nothing. Let us know. We want to help. We know there's opportunity to help. I'm not going to say every Citrix customer out there, but I think it's close. I think it's close to every Citrix customer needs more education, more knowledge on what they could do with the product, because the product's not standing still, keeps getting better. And our goal here today in podcasting with content and context is to help people get more aware of what the art of possible is. With that, today's blog is from John Diagati. I think is how we decided to pronounce it. It's from 5 days ago, and the name of it is Reducing IT Cost and Carbon Footprint with Citrix DaaS and Microsoft Azure, which in this case would be part of the Microsoft Azure Virtual Desktop, the Enterprise Motion, maybe not native AVD, but AVD and Azure desktops running in there. Bill, what's your thoughts on what we're going to cover here? Why is this one important?
Well, I think it's important for a number of reasons. Obviously, one of the reasons is as organizations shift more and more to the cloud, obviously part of the reason for doing that, one of the reasons for doing that is to minimize cost, increase efficiency, agility, et cetera. But when you're looking at specifically at cost, if you run your VMs in the cloud all the time, you're going to spend a lot more money than if you're more pragmatic about it and you're able to spin down workloads that aren't being used and so forth. So
Bill, pause there. Most people are moving for operational reasons, maybe accounting reasons, cost reasons. And if they don't do it right, moving to public cloud. That's what we're talking about, your public cloud, right?
Public cloud, yes.
It gets more expensive and you actually, cause yourself a bigger problem.
Exactly.
Geremy, are you guys seeing that?
We are, especially as customers are rolling out single session OSs more and more often, right? So listen, by far the most economical solution is multi-session OS. Microsoft has recognized this. I mean, what do you think AVD is, right? So certainly you could do it single session, but it's a multi-session OS version of a desktop OS. But more and more, customers are doing single session pulled, single session dedicated. We've talked about that in the past, but it costs a lot of money if you don't do it right.
In our data centers on our hardware, we just spent the last 15 years-ish, maybe 10 years, moving away from multi-session stuff because it causes problems. Now we have to manage profiles. Now we have to, think one user versus another one on the same system. Now all of a sudden we got to go back to that if we want to get the real value out of the cloud, or we have to take advantage of some of the better, more newer, more advanced technologies like we're going to talk about today.
Yes, sir. In fact, I think what we're going to talk about today is not even smoke and mirrors, but just features that have been baked into the product to support that use case, Andy.
Yeah, and they've been around for a while, some of them. and some of them are newer, but people.
Let me ask you guys a question before we get started. Why does Azure promote this feature or this capability? Why is Azure interested in reducing consumption?
Because Microsoft's just nice guys.
No, that's not the reason.
No, look, the ultimate goal is they know that the desktop workload is a very lucrative workload to have in your public cloud because it consumes a lot of compute. Even if you're being optimal and efficient about it, it consumes a lot of compute. And if the desktops come, guess what else is going to come? Everything else.
Yeah. If it's the most expensive thing you buy, Bill, folks aren't going to do it. So, I mean, they understand they have to embrace. It's a little bit of a catch-22, right? Like they want folks in the cloud, but at the same time, they have to make it, affordable and manageable. And it's a great point.
Yeah,
absolutely they do. And I think another element of it, and this is just my opinion, is capacity and expansion of the data center footprint, the Azure data center footprint. It's kind of like the power company wants you to reduce your power usage during the middle of the summer. Why? Because they don't have to build more power plants.
Yeah, that is true.
It's not because they want to give you back, your money. They want to be able to better control the expansion, and part of that's on them, but part of it is on us.
Yeah, I remember very vividly beginning of the pandemic. Can't believe we would talk about that like it's almost 5 years ago, but it's not. But I remember there was a point where there were so many customers spinning up resources in Azure. Yeah. I want to say it was like one of the European regions. They ran out of capacity, couldn't spin things. If you didn't have a reserved instance, you were not spinning up a new VM.
Right. Yep. I remember that.
Yeah. All right. So I think we've hit the point that you could have 100 servers running in Azure. Okay, great. You have 100 desktops running in Azure. All of them have to be built for that high water mark in terms of memory and processor performance. It's such a lucrative workload. It's like, there's a really good business in the United States selling half-ton pickup trucks, but there's also a really good business selling cars of all types. So you got your high-end, high-performance cars, and then you got your 4-door cars. The car section is super important and valuable, and that's where the desktops fit into the public cloud. I think I might have just convinced myself how to talk about that. Like it can't just be about selling trucks. You got to sell the rest of it. And by the way, there's more cars on the road than there are trucks by far.
Right.
Maybe the best way to look at that is like transfer trucks hauling around all the heavy workloads versus cars. The cars are really the lucrative part, even though we typically started with, we start with the trucks, thinking about trucks. Okay. So I think we covered that. So the first call out here is embracing hibernation, the hibernation feature. Geremy, you want to cover that?
Absolutely. So, I mean, the nut of it is we can hibernate virtual machines now. So in the past, you really had two states, either running or shut off, right? And so there was no middle ground there. And the challenge is, listen, if you got to start an OS from scratch, it takes a while, right? And so, if I could send this article to anyone, it would be Citrix IT, CSG IT, because the virtual machine that I have at Citrix, by the way, it's great, runs in Azure. It's managed, but it's power up, power down. And I think I've figured out our disconnect schedule. It's got to be like 3 hours because it turns off. And when I have to turn it back on, I go get coffee. And I come back. In fact, I can see I get the progress bar at the bottom of the screen that actually walks me through what's happening. And I can see powering on your VM. And that's when it's time to go hit the Nespresso.
So Geremy, a couple stories. One, it's Monday. So I logged in my virtual desktop, which does not run in Azure. It runs in my own data center, and it was up and running. Mm-hmm. However, it was not logged in as me. So literally 2 or 3 minutes later, by the time all the applications had launched and everything was happy, it was ready to be a high performing machine. But I had 3 minutes of, going and doing something else while it got ready. Like it wasn't the log, it wasn't the profile load. It was all those apps that have to start in the background.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, to your point, though, those are several things that have to happen. Even once your machine boots up, you log in for the first time. Guess what happens? Loads your profile, loads all the apps, all the services, whatever you have running has to be fired up before you get what they call an interactive session. So if you've ever gone into Director, ever gone into analytics and sort of picked apart your user experience before you can actually get around to using your machine, it's got to be interactive. So
Well, in parallel, I bought another TV for my house, and this is in my living room, so it's the nicest TV I have, and it's much nicer than all the other ones. And all the other ones take forever to come up and get going. This one I discovered over the weekend has a feature where it kind of hibernates. It kind of goes into a screensaver and then hibernation mode, and all I have to do is wiggle wiggle the remote, and it's up and going and ready to be used in like 2 seconds. It's game changer.
Yeah, I wonder if a combination of this is also Windows too, because in the past, so I've got a Mac, I use it quite frequently. That hibernates like a champ, and when I open it up, I'm just good to go immediately. And that's always been an issue I've had with some of my Windows laptops. By the way, it's gotten a lot better with Windows 10, and I would argue it works really well in Windows 11. But just the hibernation feature that is built into Windows has not been great over the years. I think they might have nailed it. I hope they've nailed it.
Yeah, that and the combination of the hardware underneath it's much faster than it would have been back in the day when it was hibernating on top of legacy hardware.
I'll be honest. I do have kind of a Tesla laptop now, so that's a fair point.
Yeah, Bill, just hibernation in general and people taking advantage of it.
Yeah, I think it's a huge new feature. Obviously it mimics what a lot of folks are doing on their or have historically done on their physical devices. Closing the laptop lid and letting it go to sleep or hibernate and then bring it right back up. One of the challenges in the past in Azure in particular was that this feature wasn't available, and now it is. And Citrix has jumped right on it and started taking advantage of it. I think we'll see more about that as we move through it.
Yeah.
So this is what I think is the game changer in this feature. So typically, unless you knew what you were doing, it was easy to miss this. But let's just talk about VMs in general. VMs sitting in Azure, right? As Andy goes through this video here. But VMs sitting in Azure, if you shut down your virtual machine from within your virtual machine, you just go to start, you go to shut down, you power it off, right? It will shut down your VM, but what it doesn't do is deallocate the resources.
Right.
So what that means is when a machine gets turned off and those resources get deallocated, they get basically put back into a pool that another machine can pick up and run with, right? So historically, if you went inside the VM and you press start, you shut down the whole 9 yards, it would shut down your machine, but it didn't deallocate. The problem with that is it still cost you money. It was almost like you had it running because you're still tying up those resources. That's a very big deal. Now, if you went from within, like say the Azure console, or better yet, even within Studio, right? If you shut down a VM from within Studio or the Azure portal, it would not only shut down that machine, but it would deallocate those resources, which meant you didn't get charged for it. You got a little bit of charge based on the hard drive and the storage you had, but ultimately you weren't getting charged for memory. You weren't getting charged for the 16 CPUs you thought you needed. Great. So what's slick about this hibernation feature is it deallocates those resources when you shut it down. So it's basically putting it to sleep, deallocating the resources. You're not being charged while this thing is hibernating. You go press your desktop again, you want to boot it back up, bam, it wakes up from sleep. The magic has got to be how it just ties resources back into a hibernating VM. But that is 100% a game changer, and what makes this different and faster than simply shutting down and following the auto scale schedule.
So, Geremy, the game changer for me is, yes, this can happen now, and the user experience is a big benefit from it. They get a big benefit from it.
100%. So speaking as a user, because I am a consumer of this technology, I'm an end user at Cloud Software Group, this would be phenomenal, right? Because I am 5 minutes of my day, I just recoup. Granted, it's 5 minutes, right? But from a user experience, it's super fast, right? So I get what it's doing on the back end. I get how it's helping IT save money and all those things. But ultimately, to your point, I just love the fact that it's fast.
Yeah. Well, and here's the challenge for older people like us. We used to care less about this, but now you got a whole generation coming up or in the workforce already where they've hit a button for the last 10 years and everything just came on instantly. The idea they have to wait on something to spin up and hear all the the hard drives spinning, all that stuff, they would not begin to accept that.
You think they've ever heard a hard drive spin up though, Andy? Let's be honest.
No, but they're used to just instant.
Do the SSDs make a noise? I would love to.
They're used to instant on everything.
Yeah, that is absolutely true.
So you got 2 kids. They're right. They grew up on iPads and devices that turn on instantly, haven't they?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
I can remember back several years ago watching regular TV and commercials came on. They didn't understand what that was and didn't understand why they couldn't pause it.
Right.
I can't pause this. Nope. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. It's the old school. So yeah, you're right.
My wife and I had intentionally start watching House Hunters every night before we go to sleep. But we watch it 10 minutes after it's already started, and then we start from the beginning just so we can fast forward through the commercials.
Right.
Occasionally I'll be watching the commercial and I realize, hey, I don't even have to do this, and just click, click, click. Now I'm at the next scene.
Oh, that's good.
So Geremy, question on this. I guess this doesn't apply to multi-session. This would just be single session, persistent or non-persistent, but single session.
It would be really hard to do for multi-session when you think about it. I mean, any given time, you're going to have folks logged in. When would you hibernate, whereas, in a single session, it makes sense.
The optimization with multi-session is a whole nother world anyway. So It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, so I don't know how aggressive you would be on some of these auto scaling, algorithms that you got running, or, even disconnect timers and that sort of thing. But, we talk about this a lot. We talk about dedicated machines. Granted, there's a management side of that, but, we're talking about cost here. Does this change the game in terms of, do I feel more comfortable rolling out single session dedicated OSs? I mean, this is going to nosedive the cost tremendously, hopefully.
I think it gives you a fighting chance.
Mm-hmm.
I think it does. I hadn't thought about it, but that's a really good point because, obviously the advantage of multi-session is it's effectively, in most cases, always on. By leveraging this feature, you get kind of the same behavior from a single session machine, or you could.
Yeah. I mean, it feels a lot like when you just open your laptop and boom, you're at a desktop.
Right.
Not quite the same, but we're getting there, right?
So you're not just at a desktop, you're back where you were if you paused your work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the key thing, is the ability to get back to where you were very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the more annoying thing, Bill, around my current policy is when I get logged off. I love the idea. Listen, I fire up my desktop at the house. I fire up my virtual desktop at the house. I frequently go to a coffee shop, and I love the fact that, I've transitioned from my Windows machine to my Mac with the exact same spot. Every so often, I get a bug up my butt, and I fire up my Ubuntu desktop, and I'm right back at the same spot. Anytime I have to wait because I've waited too long to log back in, it starts me from scratch, and it almost defeats the purpose. Is really what it is.
Yeah, you're trying to eat your own dog food, drink your own champagne, but 3 hours is not a lot of time to transition and be back and keep it alive. I think we probably covered it, but Geremy, take a shot at the operational efficiency and cost savings that this brings into play.
So I think what we hit is, we waste 30%. I guess this is what the article's saying, just by having things running. So, in the cloud. So the idea of leveraging the hibernation feature, you can probably be a little bit more aggressive about turning machines off now than you might have in the past. I mean, that equates to some money here for sure, some real spend, some hard costs, which, when we are asked to meet with customers and go through a sizing, not necessarily a sizing, but just a cost, analysis, sometimes it's hard to quantify things like management overhead, things like that, right? So anything we can point back to a hard savings and cost resonates with customers. That's easy to go figure out. Whereas I tell you that your guys are spending less time managing desktops. Like, people like that, but it's hard to quantify it. This is a hard spend that we can go quantify.
And I think this is part of the difference between Bill's comment around, multi-session versus single session. You can get single session now or come closer to it because you're saving 30% right off the top.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, when you think about it, in the past, what we've done is set, to keep the desktop in the state where it was when a user disconnected, is we've set long disconnect timers, or idle, I guess, the actual, not the disconnect timer, but the
session timeout, log out.
Yeah, we log them out, and the machine stays running for an hour, 2 hours, whatever. We don't really need to be concerned with that anymore, right? So now they log off, it hibernates. Maybe you give it a half an hour or something before it hibernates, in case somebody connects and then immediately connects, realize they forgot to answer that email or what have you. But the point is, I don't know why you would even bother to shut that down, other than perhaps to do maintenance periodically. But beyond that, I would leverage this feature all the way around, because it would significantly improve the end user experience.
Yeah. Next section talks about auto scale and Azure Hibernate, a powerful 1-2 duo. Geremy, why are they saying that?
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, you've got to set a schedule on when you've got machines running, peak times and schedule times. Just think through your power management auto scale features as it is. I think you can be a little bit more aggressive with your settings now. The idea being normally when you turn on auto scale, at the end of you want to have machines running so that if I'm a user, I've got a machine teed up that I can connect to, right? So you've got to go through and sort of estimate, well, listen, my 8 in the morning, right? I want to make sure I have enough VMs for folks to, connect and log in. And I have to wait, number one, to the login process, but even getting to the part where I log in, I don't want to have to be powering up machines. Now, granted, it does happen in Azure fairly quickly, but I think you can be a little bit more aggressive in some of that scheduling because the boot up time is going to be so much quicker. And,
Wow.
I also wonder if you need to even, log folks out anymore as much as you just put them to sleep. Because at the end of the day, to your point, Bill, I'd like to reconnect and be exactly where I was and not have to wait on that login process either to load the profile again for the first time, launch the apps that normally launch. And then once I got a desktop, start clicking things just to get to back where my preferred user state is.
So is this because of this, we can be less aggressive with auto scale because we don't have to be trying to save all the time because hibernation is going to help us save. Is that the real message?
It could be. I guess I need to go through and pick this apart a little bit. So there's an article that's linked inside of TechZone that actually gives some guidance on what that might look like. In fact, there's a pretty fascinating graph on just cost savings. But to your point, if autoscale is going to turn me off, then yes, I could probably be less aggressive. But there's some features here, and I'm looking at the preview features here. There's a knob that says autoscale support for hibernation, which I guess means as opposed to completely turning off a VM, autoscaling might just hibernate a VM instead, which means I could be more aggressive in just hibernating VMs as opposed to turning them completely off. Does that make sense?
Turning completely off and or scaling down? Is that part of the story too?
I would think so. I'll have to go back and look. I don't think there's a screen grab for this yet. I haven't turned this on. I don't think we've got this preview turned on in our test environment yet either.
Hey, Bill, comments here?
I think again to what Geremy was saying is that we probably can be more aggressive because at the end of the day, what really my question is that I think this really applies more to persistent workloads than non-persistent workloads. At least that would be my thinking, because non-persistent workloads, when Citrix Studio shuts those down, they are fully deallocated, and in many cases, even the storage footprint can be removed. So you're getting additional cost savings if they're non-persistent. For persistent desktops, the only time I would ever shut them down would be during a maintenance cycle if there's something I needed to do, or maybe once a month or something on a weekend when you're doing maintenance to your VDI environment. Maybe I would consider doing it then. But for the most part, outside of that, I think hibernation is going to be a game changer in how we manage these things going forward.
Well, and that's to me the Microsoft angle. We've talked about on this call several times. I've talked about it. Several people talked about it last week in customer meetings. We don't do enough persistent desktops. We need to do non-persistent for security reasons, but we've also hamstrung the virtual desktop world, public cloud or not, by focusing on non-persistent every chance. And there's a whole nother delta of users, a big one, that don't use VDI because they've been told non-persistent is the only way to do it.
Right.
I'll tell you personally, I've got my own virtual desktops. I do use them every week. Back when I had my own persistent one, I used it every day.
Yeah.
Geremy, do you have a persistent or non-persistent?
I think I've got non-persistent, but I do have it persists some changes though outside of the profile. I've got a few things installed, so I think that might go into a layer.
And maybe.
Yeah. You know what? It's hard to tell, actually.
Well, that's just it. You shouldn't know.
No, probably goes into the user layer associated with or profile.
Yeah.
Well, this is really good for this conversation because I don't use my non-persistent as much as I use my persistent, not because I can't install apps. I can't install apps in either one. It takes longer to get going. And that's where this whole hybrid thing kicks in.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point.
All right, the next section talks about the green impact. And before I let you guys even talk about that, I'm going to say green in IT, as much as we want to talk about saving the earth, is about saving money or making money. What do you think?
I'm not going to disagree with you. I mean, that drives business. Like, I think this is definitely important. I think this is probably more important from a corporate business level than it is an IT level, to your point. But knowing that IT is viewed as a cost center more than anything, it shouldn't. Like, I think that IT runs a lot of business, and I think that needs to be recognized. But let's be fair, a lot of organizations look at IT as a cost center as opposed to anything revenue generating. So, I think you hit the nail on the head. Anything that IT can do to save money, it's probably where it starts. But this does drive corporate green initiatives for sure.
Yeah. Anything IT can do to help you make money and in parallel also save money is everybody's winning. And if it does good for the earth at the same time, I think everybody can be happy with that.
Yeah.
I think IT helps companies make a lot of money, but they're just not very good at articulating that.
They will turn it off for a day or two, see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Ask
All
in
right,
hospital.
Conclusion here. Bill, I'll let you go first. Conclusion on hibernation in Microsoft Azure public cloud as it relates to desktop virtualization strategies. What does it do for us?
Yeah, I think the first sentence is interesting, given our conversation a few minutes ago, and that it's a new paradigm for managing persistent machines. I think this is a game changer. Is the ability to leverage this feature and improve the user experience at the end of the day. And then, of course, you get the benefit of some cost savings that result from this. And so you're getting cost savings and a better user experience. Usually those are items that are contradictory, right? But here we're getting to the point where we can have both. So I think it's a great new feature, and I'm looking forward to testing it and playing with it.
Before I let Geremy answer that question, I want to tell you what just happened to me. I just ordered my lunch, and because Panera knows what I normally order, I had to go click, 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 done. Similar thing, right? It was ready and waiting on me.
So what you're saying is your Panera order was hibernated until you logged back into the app, and it just had you go. Next. Off you go.
It allowed me to just jump in right where I left off last time I made an order, and the convenience of it was noticeable to the point where if I'm someone a little younger, I don't remember the old process of having to walk in, order something, and I'm going to have to just keep evolving to what's next, right? It's going to have to be something next. But
right,
even someone of my age recognizes, hey, that's so much better. And I don't want to go order somewhere else because right there they know what I want.
Are you a pick two guy at Panera? You pick two?
Nope, that's too much work. I pick the same thing every time.
Well, you only have to pick it the first time, and then it hibernates for the next time. You can go through and just hit.
I will tell you that I have an apple. I have an apple instead because it's healthier for me. Plus, I shove the chips in my mouth, the kettle chips, so fast that I end up just slicing the heck out of the roof of my mouth.
I do like those chips, though. They're not bad.
Yeah. All right, Geremy, your conclusion on this topic.
I mean, listen, I think Bill hit the nail on the head. I really do think this is a game changer. I love the idea that, and I'm a little surprised that hibernation was just recently, I guess, added by Microsoft, but nonetheless, the fact that we've already tied that into auto scaling, it's pretty slick, actually. So if I can make the case, turn this on my virtual desktop CSG, that'd be fantastic, because I think user experience is a big deal. And this is what I'm used to on a laptop.
Yeah. You've gotten used to it over the last 10 years. You hit a button and it's on. If you have to wait 30 seconds to get your laptop, your TV to turn back on, it feels like a lifetime. Yeah. All right. Well, gentlemen, thanks for joining. And always good talking to you guys, and appreciate the discussion. And I look forward to doing it again next week.
Yep. I will see you guys next week.
Yep.
All right.